Hey, how's it going everyone? Tazen here, today bringing you some super exciting JRPG and Japanese gaming news. Firstly, kick things off with some Final Fantasy VII Remake news. So recently at an event for The World Ends With You Final Remix, Tetsuya Nomura was answering questions from fans, and one fan said to him, "I want to play before Crisis Final Fantasy VII again." So in response to this, we have a translation as what Nomura said, and according to Gamatsu, Nomura said, "Not everyone may know this, but I'm remaking Final Fantasy VII. Right now, I'm concentrating on Kingdom Hearts 3, but when that's finished, FF7 will be where I head next. I'm thinking about ideas regarding the remake's release. I even spoke to producer Yoshinori Kitase about it today. All of us old-timers are considering various developments in regards to what accompanies the remake. Like if we can manage to do something about the compilation of Final Fantasy VII titles too. But for the time being, please wait for FF7's turn to come." So this is some really huge and awesome news in regards to the scope of which they wish to potentially incorporate titles from the compilation extended universe of FF7. So the compilation of FF7 covers quite a lot regarding both games and other media, but going chronologically, it starts off with Before Crisis Final Fantasy VII, which was a Japanese mobile exclusive game never released to the West or in English in any form. This covers events of the Turks before Final Fantasy VII, goes over quite a few story things, including some new materia and things like that. Then we obviously have Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, the PlayStation Portable exclusive title acting as the direct prequel to Final Fantasy VII. This is the title where you played as Zack Fair as the main character, included other characters like Aerith Gainsborough and Cloud Strife in it, so it's basically covering everything right up until almost immediately before Final Fantasy VII, but then includes some unique things that weren't basically covered in FF7, so they were things like new characters such as Angeal and Genesis, for example. Then obviously we have FF7, and then we have a novella which takes place during Final Fantasy VII. It's called The Maiden Who Travels the Planet, and this is about Aerith Gainsborough's journeys through the live stream from the moment you last encounter her at the end of Disc 1 in FF7 all the way up until she returns at the very end of FF7. After that, we have a compilation of stories called On the Way to the Smile, going over the episodes of various characters and their journeys from the epilogue of FF7 right up until the beginning of FF7 Advent Children. And then, of course, we have Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, and by extension, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children Complete, which is the extended Blu-ray version, which covers a good extra 20 or so more minutes of the story. And then following that, we have Dirge of Cerberus, which takes place 3 years after the main game, 1 year after Advent Children, and this covers Vincent Valentine's story, and quite a lot of unique things going on with this story, specifically events between Vincent and Hojo, an underground advanced human society, as well as enigmatic entities like Chaos and Omega Weapon. But what really excites me about this message from Tetsuya Nomura is that him and the team seem to be acknowledging the compilation of FF7, and this is something that several people have worried about prior to hearing this, because we're not really sure how much they're going to be changing the FF7 remake. Will there be somewhat of a reimagining or reboot of several things, which basically make some of the compilation things not canon? But if they're thinking of incorporating it in, one, we could see some forms of remasters, or we could see some forms of remakes whereby that they're maybe adding in extra things or removing certain things so that they fit a line with the Final Fantasy VII Remake story. Now, what really excites me about this is Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. This is one of the best Final Fantasy games I've played in regards to story, and this is one of the best PSP titles I've played. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed how it covered the events right from when Zack Fair was much younger, going all the way right up to immediately before the beginning of FF7 and his journey with Cloud Strife towards the second half of the story. Of all the compilation titles, I find this is the most important, because when looking at the Final Fantasy VII story in the original game itself, none of the other compilation titles actually have any direct mention in the Final Fantasy VII game. So for example, Advent Children somewhat exists on its own in the sense that if you played the Final Fantasy VII game, you would never be aware of that story to come. Likewise with Dirge of Cerberus, and also Before Crisis to a smaller degree, but it's difficult because we've never had that game released in English. But Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, that story, at least the overarching scenario of that story, is actually mentioned and has several flashbacks to throughout the Final Fantasy VII game, making it a direct connection to Final Fantasy VII. So in a way it stands as Final Fantasy VII Episode 0, or Final Fantasy VII Part 0 in a way. So it'll be really cool to see that, but also I think what they could really do awesome, and this is something I've hoped for a long time, is that they made an expansion episode of The Maiden Who Travels the Planet. So playing as Aerith Gainsborough from the moment of her events at the end of FF7's Disc 1 leading up until the end of Final Fantasy VII, because there's a lot that takes place with her throughout her journeys through the live stream and her encounters with Sephiroth, and a lot that contributes to how Final Fantasy VII ends. So I think that would be fantastic to do, basically somewhat of it, even if it was 3 to 5 hours of gameplay. I think that would be a perfect way to add a story into the game that is essentially part of a story that takes place during the main game itself. And now moving on to some more awesome Final Fantasy VII news. So I briefly touched upon Final Fantasy VII On the Way to a Smile. What this is a novel written by Kazushige Nojima, and it's part of the compilation series covering several short stories of characters' journeys from the end of Final Fantasy VII up until the beginning of Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. This was released on April 16th, 2009 alongside the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children Complete Blu-ray edition, and then it was later released in 2011 in German titled Der Blick nach vorn, and then also in 2014 in French, also titled On the Way to a Smile. But this novel was recently localized into English, and as of last week, Tuesday 30th of October, it's finally been released in English. So this is the novel here. It is a fantastic novel. It's just over 200 pages long, and it covers the short stories of several characters. So there's an episode Denzel, episode Tifa, episode Barrett, episode Nanaki, who's also Red 13, episode Yuffie, episode Shinra, which goes over Rufus, Shinra and the Turks, as well as the episode Livestream. Now the episode Livestream is split into two parts, the black and white part, and there's 3 white parts and 3 black parts, and each of these take place at the end of the characters' episodes. Now the Livestream parts go over Aerith's journey through the Livestream after Final Fantasy VII, as well as Sephiroth's journey throughout the live stream after Final Fantasy VII. I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil things for people who haven't played Final Fantasy VII, but it also goes into details on the Geostigma, as well as the origins of new characters in Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, like Kadaj. This is fantastic, that's now been released, so I highly recommend you give it a read if you're interested in getting it. I know it can currently be purchased from several online bookstores such as Amazon US and Book Depository for approximately $15 US or so. And now moving on to some news regarding World of Final Fantasy Maxima. So the Maxima DLC / expansion was recently released on Tuesday, November 6th. It also marked the first release of World of Final Fantasy on Nintendo Switch. Now in the week leading up to World of Final Fantasy Maxima's release, we got a lot of cool information and quite a significant amount of information during the pre-release live stream event by Square Enix. Now I won't go over all the details just because there's such an enormity of them. I will leave links below, but I'm going to go over some of the very important details. So firstly, having a look here, we've gotten several new characters added to the game. In Final Fantasy VII style, we have received Zack Fair from Final Fantasy VII / Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. We've received Sarah Farron from Final Fantasy XIII, who also makes appearances in the other Final Fantasy games, but here we can see her in her Final Fantasy XIII 2 attire and weapon. We've received Cecil, the main character from Final Fantasy IV, and we've also received several new summons like Shiva Ixion and Yojimbo with his dog Diagoro. This looks absolutely awesome, but going on to some of the finer details of the additions to World of Final Fantasy Maxima. So now you can carry 2 more Mirages than before. It's now 12 Mirages you can carry as opposed to 10 previously. The game has a new Game Plus mode. Lots of rare items have apparently been added. Once you beat the game, there is now a treasure search option which allows you to find treasure more easily. There are various changes to make the game easier in certain ways. For example, it's easier to catch the 3 starter Mirages, but they've also added a nightmare difficulty option where, according to this article by Gamatsu, even small enemies are significantly stronger. And then the last really important thing I want to mention is that a secret ending has been added. So this is awesome that we're getting quite a lot of new things. I really like that there is a new Game Plus and a new difficulty, because people who have potentially already beaten World of Final Fantasy can go back with their save file, start a new game, maybe play on the nightmare difficulty level, and even by the end of it unlock a new secret ending. This is fantastic news, which makes me really excited to finally play the game now. And now moving on to some awesome Dragon Quest XI news. So the Dragon Quest series as a whole worldwide has shipped over 76 million copies. But what is awesome is that Dragon Quest XI has been announced to have shipped over 4 million copies. So this covers both digital and physical sales. It covers the Japanese release in 2017, the Asian release in 2017, as well as the Western release in 2018. And it covers both the PlayStation 4 and PC version, as well as the 3DS version released in Japan. This is fantastic, and according to this article by RPG Site, we've got a translation of a message from the game designer Yuji Horii. So apparently he said, "I was truly delighted when I heard the news that Dragon Quest XI had exceeded 4 million sales worldwide. Back when I created the first Dragon Quest game over 30 years ago, I could not possibly have dreamt that it would become a series that would cross the seas and be played by people all around the world. This is the 11th numbered Dragon Quest title, and in depicting a hero's tale, also represents a new beginning for the series. When I think that there are now over 4 million of these heroes all around the world, and each one has gone on their own individual adventure, it reminds me how glad I am we made the game. I would like to express my sincere thanks to all the people who played Dragon Quest XI, both the fans of the previous games and the new fans who started with this one. Thank you all." This is absolutely fantastic news, especially for the future of the Dragon Quest series in the West as well, because this is a game that they were talking about. If it weren't to do well in the West, then they may not be continuing the Western or English localizations of Dragon Quest games. But to see this do well, we may get that offline version of Dragon Quest X come to the West. We may get that mobile version of Dragon Quest IX, and it's also awesome that they still haven't even released the Nintendo Switch version of Dragon Quest XI, so we may even get significantly more sales from the Nintendo Switch version alone, given the Nintendo Switch is doing so well both worldwide and in the West, and people love that portable factor. So given that a lot of people have actually started the Dragon Quest series with Dragon Quest XI, this may be a way for them to also dive into it through a portable factor, which has me very excited about the future of the series. And lastly, onto some news regarding Travis Strikes Again, the upcoming No More Heroes game coming exclusively to the Nintendo Switch as of yet, being developed by Suda51. So we got a brand new key visual artwork regarding this game. Looks awesome, but what I want to touch upon today is that it appears that this game will indeed be getting a physical release. Now this hasn't been officially confirmed by Nintendo or Grasshopper manufacturer, but Gamestop seem to have accidentally confirmed this by publishing a retail listing for the game for $39.99 USD. So it appears it's only a matter of time that Nintendo and Grasshopper manufacturer will come out with the information that this game is getting a physical release. Given this was leaked by GameStop, or accidentally I should say, seems to allude to that this is quite certain, given the game is releasing on January 18th, 2019, only several months from now. So it's not a game that is releasing over a year from now, and it just happens to have a placeholder order which could get taken away, given that sometimes you just don't even know whether these games are getting a physical release so distant in the past. But given it's only a couple months away, it seems that this is quite likely, which has me excited because I just love physical copies of games, especially for the Nintendo Switch. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Let me know your thoughts on anything discussed below. Again, really exciting news for the Final Fantasy series, especially the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Some awesome news regarding Dragon Quest, and even some cool news regarding a physical release for No More Heroes next game. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and until next video, stay spot on.